What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here, as always. And today I want to talk through some wide receiver trade stuff. We talked a little bit yesterday about Cooper Kupp, where things would go, and I want to dive into that more because I feel like there's other names that I haven't mentioned to you guys yet. We mentioned Mike Williams, of course. That's the other big one that seems to be being thrown around there right now. But I think there are other names. Like, I think there are other legitimate names that make sense for the Steelers when you're looking at this from their perspective. And so let's talk about a few things. So let's talk first of all about Cooper Kupp and why I think personally, just me personally, I think the schematic fit concerns are a little overblown. So Cooper Kupp, man, is one of those receivers that is just an elite receiver that changes your offense. Now, I think the biggest concerns with Kupp are the injuries. I think that's the biggest concern here that I have with any trade that would occur for Cooper Kupp. I think, the fact that he hasn't played a full season since 2021, the fact that he had a high ankle sprain earlier this year, the fact that all of that is very real, I think is a significant concern if you're the Steelers. I don't think you can look anyone in the face and say that's not a concern. And so it definitely is. If I'm Pittsburgh, I would be worried about it. But I also look at the Steelers and I look at this team and he fits in perfectly right where Van Jefferson does. He would be a great blocking wide receiver that completely opens up what you can do in the run game. He's a Z receiver that can play slot. These are the types of guys that Russ has really flourished with before in his career. He'd be a great underneath receiver that can run crossers. He's a tough player. There's no doubt about it. Like this guy could definitely be a very, very solid football player for the Steelers. And that's no surprise. Just look at what he does on the football field every time he goes out there. The concern outside of cost and injuries that I have is the fact that we are going to be talking about a second round or third round pick. I think that is a steep cost for this guy with that contract. I think it's easy to say go up and give up that second round pick. But when he's a 31-year-old wide receiver that has been often injured, I think that makes it a lot harder. I do. I'd love the idea of adding Cooper Kupp to the offense. I don't think the Rams are going to get a second from anyone. Maybe, as we talked about yesterday when we were talking about Devontae Adams having that conditional third that turns into a second with certain conditions, maybe that's the way to go about this. I'd be willing to give up a third for Kupp. I think a second's too steep. This is a guy that has not been healthy enough, and if you are going to get a difference maker like that, you want to make sure that that guy's going to be on the football field. And so to be for the Steelers, that is a significant concern for them. But like I said yesterday, I feel like, going out and get a guy like Cup, like that's the move that the players make in the market, right? DeAndre Hopkins is off the market now. Chiefs just went and got him. Cup is the type of player you get that transforms your offense and gives you more firepower. And so I completely understand why you go get this guy. I don't think you give up a second for him, but maybe you give up that third that can turn into a second. If he's out there and you get what you would want out of him, that makes a lot of sense to me. It kind of feels like the rave right now in the NFL, and it's something I would do if I were the Steelers. I would definitely explore that option. I would give up a third round pick for him. I think this is a guy, that you go out and say, man, let's make a move. Like, let's show that we're ready to win. Let's show that we're ready to win in the postseason. Because I know when January comes around and they face Josh Allen again, and they're in Buffalo and they're down 28-3 at halftime, and they don't have the receivers to go after them, I think you're going to be kind of looking at this and saying, "Well, maybe you should have made a move like this." And it doesn't really matter, what happened in the summer at this point. We've talked about this over and over again, how Steelers failed to properly address the wide receiver position. Well, now you have another chance. There are multiple players out there, but Kupp is the type of guy that you can take a swing at and really, really go for the fences with. So that's someone to me that instantly pops out as an interesting name. And again, if you're shooting for the stars, that's the type of player you obviously will go out and try to get. And so I do think, it's not crazy at all for the Steelers to potentially make that move. Meanwhile, I think there are other names out there. So I don't think this is a cup or all scenario. So if you don't love the cost and the Rams probably don't feel like they have to trade Cooper Cup, at least if I were them, I wouldn't feel like I had to trade Cooper Cup. Then you can turn to other options. And the other options, are guys like Mike Williams, who definitely have some questions about them. But to me, there are some really interesting names that I would like. But the two names that stick out to me are Darius Slayton and Jacoby Myers. These are two guys that aren't in the cup tier, but are really solid in their own right and have different skill sets. Jacoby Myers is kind of Cooper Cup light in some ways. Doesn't have the injury concerns. He's younger. He's very tough over the middle of the field. He's kind of like an all-time team crash dummy. He's a great blocker, super, super tough football player. Fits the scheme really well. Could be that Z that I talked about. Can play in those condensed sets, can play in the slot. And so I do think, this team could look at a guy like Myers if the Raiders are willing to move him. I don't think it's very clear that the Raiders are willing to move him. But if they are, I mean, if I were Omar Khan, he might be my number one target. With factoring in cost, age, all of this, because I feel like he's a long-term answer to the problems, right? A guy like Kupp might be a 1 or 2 year type answer rather than, a full-time answer. Jacoby Myers is a long-term answer to your issues here, and he can certainly give you a really solid base. I mean, he's only 27 years old, so there's tons of upside there with Jacoby Myers to tap into. Darius Slayton's an interesting player. He'll be frustrating for some players, for some people, not players. He's probably one of the more frustrating guys on film, but productive player that gets open. I think this team needs another guy that can just get open. I think Calvin Austin is one of those guys, but I think they could use another one. A guy that just kind of wins off the line of scrimmage, and can beat guys through their route running, 312 yards, 25 receptions. Really fun player in terms of what he can bring to the table from a route running standpoint. Can win down the field. I don't think he's just a 1, 2 level threat. I think he's a 3 level threat that wins over the middle and has great speed. I think so. He fits the offense really well when you're trying to push the ball vertically with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. So I think that is a big time thing for what the Steelers can look for. And so I think Slayton is a really underrated option because he kind of brings different things that a guy like Myers or Kupp don't bring, which is that downfield speed. And I think that fits what they like. I think it fits what they should be looking for as well. And all three of these guys to me are good blockers, and bring various levels of ability to do that. So they would upgrade over Van Jefferson, which is the most important thing to me. And so I really do think, that the Steelers should look at those three names. Now, there are other names that I didn't mention that I think are going to make sense. A guy like Mike Williams, who hasn't looked like himself, man, he's just been hurt a lot. Guy tore his ACL last year, missed all summer. Jets film was ugly. Is he as bad as the Jets film? Probably not. Probably he's a guy that's willing to throw him those jump balls like Russ is, and he would be better in the Steelers system and probably be very cheap. And then there's also, a guy like an Adam Thielen, where he is like in my opinion, the last case scenario, where if you don't get any of these guys, you go out there and you maybe go out and get Thielen, say at least we got somebody. But dealing with the hamstring injury, he'll be back this week. We'll see where he looks, what he looks like then. But this is a guy that definitely has seen his better days at this point. And so, I would definitely be willing to look into and take that swing on Cooper Kupp for that conditional three that maybe turns into a two. I don't think I'd give up the straight two. I think the injury history is too concerning for me for a 31-year-old player to do that, but I'm willing to do that conditional one personally. Ideally, if you can just get three straight up, that's cool. Maybe you can get a fourth that turns into a three. That's something we'll see kind of where it comes in. I don't think that the Rams are in a place where they have to trade Kupp either, as we have said. And I think, if they beat Minnesota on Thursday, I think we might just stop talking about this. I don't think that, a Kupp trade has to happen because I really look at, who they face in the second half of the season, and I look at it and say, "Oh, the Rams could make a run." I do say that. So I don't think that necessarily they have to move him. So we'll see there. And I think Slayton and Myers are the other two that make a lot of sense for the Steelers. And so those would be my top three, if I were Pittsburgh. But we will see kind of how that goes about. They definitely need to add a wide receiver. They can't go into the second half of the year without adding one. So that would be a complete failure and add on to the issues that they have not rectified from the offseason after they traded Deontay Johnson. We'll see who they kind of look at. I wouldn't be super upset about missing DeAndre Hopkins personally. Wasn't my favorite fit. I liked all three of those guys I just named to you, Kupp, Myers, and Slayton more than I like DeAndre Hopkins in his fit in Pittsburgh personally. So we'll see where this all goes. But Steelers face the Giants on Monday night. I don't know if they're going to add somebody there. I kind of feel like this might be a bye week move, especially, we're talking like a guy like Slayton, who is playing for the Giants, obviously, and definitely could be a move that is made after that game. All right, folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell for more. We'll be back tomorrow live from practice. Thanks for watching, everybody.